to DCS P-47 Startup Training. I'm Top Gun with the AKA War Dog Squadron. So like most World War II modules that we've gotten so far in DCS, the startup sequence is pretty simple. Nothing groundbreaking to it. It's actually kind of a mosh-up between the P-51 and the 190 is how I like to think of it. But let's go ahead and jump into the office to get started. I'm going to be operating off of checklist version 1.1, which I'll have a link to in the description. The items that you see in red text are items that are already set in the correct position for startup if you're spawning into a new aircraft. However, if you do go back into land and have to repair and have to shut down your engine, those are steps that you will need to check on as you start back up. So this is early access. This is recorded beginning of June 2020, so some things are of course liable to change. So I'll try and keep this updated as things move along, but let's go ahead and get started. So the parking brake for the 47 is just like the 51. So it's a T-handle that you pull out and hold. Press the press your wheel brakes down, let them go, and then let the T-handle go. As long as the T-handle stays out, it's good to go. You've got your parking brakes set. And while you've got your cockpit open, contact ground crew as needed to rearm, refuel. I'm just going to skip that step. So let's go ahead and get the battery on. So left to the on position. And then the generator up to on. If it's necessary, if it's dark or getting dark, you can do the cockpit lights up to on as needed. Flaps, go ahead and throw those into the forward position, and just like in the 51, you'll notice that they do not actually move until hydraulic pressure is applied. So they won't do anything for the time being. And note that these are momentary flaps, so you can set them to pretty much any intermediate position, and you can see the degrees on the flaps on either one of them, so you can set them to whatever you need to. So for example, like short field takeoffs, it's recommended you might want to do up to 20 degrees. For normal takeoffs though, you shouldn't really need any. Trim tabs, it's set to take off by default in a new aircraft, but you'll need to set your rudder to the TO position. Oil cooler and intercooler shutters, go ahead and put those both to neutral. So we'll do the intercooler. Oops. And the oil cooler, for whatever reason, when you first try to close it, it doesn't seem to respond, so you actually have to hit open a little bit first, and then it'll respond to a close command. Fuel boost pump rheostat, full counterclockwise. It's already set by default, but it's down here. It needs to be start and altitude position. Fuel selector valve, set it to the 12 o'clock position. And you want to take off with internal fuel. You don't want to rely on drop tanks for taking off. And then once you're up in the air, you can switch things up and switch back over to your drop tanks. Crack open your throttle about 1 or so inches. Supercharger lever, aft off, that's this back here. Most of the time when you're taking off, you'll go ahead and attach to the throttle, but we don't actually do it for part of the startup. Mixture control, also full aft to the off position. The mixture control lever I would suggest to keybind, because you need to switch that over to the auto rich position pretty quickly during the startup, so that'll make your life a bit easier. Propeller governor full forward. Propeller mode up to constant speed, that's already set by default. And manual says to press on the circuit breaker as well, but that doesn't appear to really do anything. If you want navigation lights, you've got wing and tail, up for bright and down for dim. If it's nighttime, you got your landing light, middle is off. Extend and retract is down, extends up. Let's go ahead and prime the engine. So right click to unlock, and then anywhere from 4 to 6. I usually end up doing 5 or 6. And then go ahead and right click it to relock. Set your magnetos full clockwise to both. And set your radio to the ATC channel. Just like in the P-51, this radio, you can't set specific frequencies in the cockpit. It has to be done in the mission editor. Usually channel B is reserved for ATC. And then you can go ahead and bring up your communications menu, and F5 for ATC, F1 for your airfield, and F3 for startup. For the starter, let's go ahead and do up to engage for just a moment to engage the starter brushes. And then for the energized position, this is very much like the 190. You have to press and hold it down to get the flywheel up to speed, up to 20 seconds. And if you have the in-game volume cranked up, you can hear the flywheel spinning up after a while. And then up to engage. And then set your mixture to auto rich. And you may have to hold the energize for a while for it to catch. It takes a surprising amount of time sometimes. Once the engine does start, however, go ahead and reduce the RPMs down to about 900, and you're going to want to keep it there until the oil temperature gets up to about 40 degrees or so. And just check on all your engine instrumentation in the meantime. Make sure your cylinder heads aren't going wonky or anything like that. So this part may take a minute. So we'll continue on while this warms up. But at this point, we're just about ready to go. So we can go ahead and release the parking brake by tapping the wheel brakes. And we'll go ahead and taxi out. Let's contact ACC first.
Infield 1-1, request taxi to runway.
And the tail wheel is lockable, but when it's not locked, which is the aft position where it's castering, you can just use differential brakes. You really don't need much power to taxi this thing. And once you get lined up, let's lock the tail wheel. Let's close the canopy. You can either do that by clicking on the knobs back here or the electrical switch, so it's a momentary press, so you can stop it wherever you need. Let's go ahead and uncage our ADI. And then if you'd done this earlier and you were taxiing, chances are it's going to be whopper jawed. You'll want to pull it back out to recage it and then uncage it again. And then you also want to do the flywheel here to set the horizon line a little bit below, because you're actually already at a slight incline here because of your stance. Let's go ahead and adjust our altimeter here as well. So QFE for whatever they've set it to, or you can set it to airfield, whichever you prefer to do. And go ahead, and cowl flaps should already be open, but go ahead and pull this out. And these are fairly slow. It takes a good couple of seconds for them to open and close. And it's very small movement. It's kind of hard to see from the inside. But I'm closing them right now. And it's so slow, it's hard to even register. But give it enough time and you'll finally see it moving. And for those who want to get going with the weapons and whatnot right out of the gate, so go ahead and flip this to down to guns and camera, and your gun sight brightness is down here, so move it clockwise. And lastly, let's get the pitot tube into the up on position. And last but not least, let's move the turbocharger up. Zoom in a little bit here. And right click on that button down there and it will attach to your throttle. Now in some circumstances, I think it's when it's really hot, you'll actually want to leave the turbocharge off for a takeoff, but for most other times you'll want it on. So for pretty much just like all other World War II aircraft, you're going to be using rudder, a little bit of differential brake if absolutely necessary to stay lined up. We're going to redline it on the manifold pressure, and away we go. At about 100 knots, push forward a little bit to get the nose wheel up, and then lift off. You may have to do a fair amount of right stick initially to counteract all the torque, but it's actually not too bad. It's pretty stable. It's pretty easy to taxi and take off. And once you've gotten up to a safe altitude, you can go ahead and bring back your manifold pressure back into the green. But that's pretty much it. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know. Hope this has been helpful. Thank you.